this is what amplifies your thought leadership platform or your live events. The only way for people to know what you're doing is if you tell them. And so social media is where we're going to tell them. And the biggest tip and trick that I can share with your listeners that it would be a great takeaway is the hierarchy of how Facebook or LinkedIn decides if they're going to put it in front of other people.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am here to this is Yona Weiss, by the way, in case you don't recognize my voice already. We're here today with Adam, AAA Adams, who to me has a very dear place in my heart because the first podcast I was ever on as a guest was the Creative Real Estate Podcast with Adam Adams. And now I'm a podcast superstar. I've been a guest on over 100 podcasts to the date. And it all comes, we're going back to our roots today. So thank you, Adam, for joining us.
Thank you. I'm really excited. You hold a dear place in my heart too, my friend.
I appreciate that. A little bit about Adam, in case you don't know who he is. He's, like I said, AAA Adams. He's someone that seeks to add value to everyone in every interaction, everything he does. So whether that's from, educating thousands of investors with, through real estate events and meetups that he's putting on, podcasts, he's the host of podcasts, through his coaching program. And when I say meetups, he's been recognized by meetup.com as one of the top 6 meetup organizers in the world. Okay. So we're talking about out of thousands or tens of thousands or millions. I don't know how many meetups there are, but
225,000.
225,000 and you're top 6. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I could just go on and on. He's a multifamily investor and now currently owns and operates, oversees a portfolio with over 100 million in holdings and assets. So many, a multifamily syndicator. Like I said, he's putting on events, and particularly an event that I hope to make it to one day, which is the Raising Money Summit, which is happening in Denver, Colorado. And it's still happening this year.
We're going to do it live in person. Yep. Last year, so we are going to go a little bit. What's interesting, just real fast, last year we had 617 people, and this year we're going to a bigger venue, but we're going down to 450 people max, which is still a ton. But yeah, we're going to, just because of COVID, we just got to.
Right. You have to play by the rules, and you have to keep, the social distancing and try to make sure that everyone's comfortable. And I've been speaking about this a lot with a bunch of people, and a lot of people are kind of pivoting to doing these virtual online events. And, I personally think that's great because, a lot of people are still, worried and can't get out there and don't want to expose themselves right now. And, I think it's great that people are taking on new, kind of uncharted territory in going virtual. And there's probably going to be a lot of, stumbling along the way until people get it right. But at the same time, I commend you that you're still going forward with, the in-person event, because there's nothing like meeting in person.
Yeah. If it was July, we wouldn't be ready yet. I'm hosting my first 4 events in July, but the big events, I think we feel better about it since it's all the way October.
Yeah. And so, to me, you're someone that is an innovator. Okay. So you're doing new things, right? You're trying out new things, new challenges. I mean, recently I came across, you have this great, mastermind that you started, and you invited me to participate in one of those, which was an incredible experience. Just gathering together huge, people in the real estate space. You can gather together and just discuss ideas and kind of bounce ideas off one another. That's huge. What else are you doing that you've been innovating recently? I know there's a ton, but I want you to tell me.
Oh, well, I'll brief it. So we own a few apartment buildings and we manage them. And so that has to happen. Like the show doesn't just stop because of COVID. We still have to manage.
Yeah.
And so that's happening, but our acquisition stopped. We stopped buying properties back. It was February, but the end of February, a couple of weeks before they officially started locking down the country. But we decided back then that we're not going to host events for until, at the time we said until June 1st. Now it's July 1st. And we also said we're definitely not going to look for any deals for at least the next 3 to 6 months. So no, September 1st was the day that we were like, okay, on September 1st, we can kind of check it out and see if there's anything out there that we want to look at. We'll relook at the market. But you're right, we pivoted a little bit because of that. We're still busy, but we have a big team. So I've already been helping people launch podcasts for
Yeah.
a year and a half. I've got, out of 6 people that I've launched their podcast, all 6 got into the top 1% on iTunes.
Wow.
So it's a skill that I have on the marketing side of getting the podcast out in front of people. So I'm doing that more now than before. And I even hired a couple of extra virtual assistants to edit people's podcasts. So that's one kind of pivot.
Yeah.
The other pivot is, after hiring those other 2 assistants, now I'm at 5 virtual assistants, 4 of them from the Philippines, one is from India. I looked at our process of what we do to bring on virtual assistants, and I just said, you know what? We can take this process and we can help other people, because we've got the network
Hmm.
of tens of thousands of VAs that are all looking for work, right? And all qualified. And we've got this process. And so we turned it into a business, and we've helped, it's only 10 people so far, but we've helped 10 people get a VA. They're all excited about it and giving us testimonials. We've got 2 more that we just started. And so it's kind of exciting. I'm not really involved in that company. My virtual assistants pretty much run it the
That's
way,
so cool.
but it's been great, and people are really, really happy, because I think the big thing is most people don't know how to get a virtual assistant. They're afraid of it, or
Yeah.
they're not sure what steps. We interview you, get to know exactly what you're looking for, have you take a test. It takes 12 minutes. But we do all that, and then we do all the hard stuff. So it's been fun, and I think it's been a good service to provide.
It is, and I think there are a ton of people that can benefit from that. And I think it's amazing that you're able to take something that you're doing anyways, and then just see, well, how I've. And I think it's more of a talent of recording the process, right? So you've recorded the process of how you do things, and then now you can scale that to show other people exactly how you've done that and turn it into a business, which is pretty incredible. I'm curious, you touched on something that you've helped people get into the top 1% of
Yeah.
iTunes. What does that mean? And how do you measure that?
Well, for the easiest way to measure it is to see how many ratings and reviews people have.
Okay.
So the normal amount of ratings and reviews is somewhere between 10 and 30. The most shows have, well, if they're new, they have 5 to 10. If they're established for a year or so, they're still usually going to have under 40 ratings and reviews. iTunes looks at that because they know that 0.6% of podcasts have more than 100 ratings and reviews.
Really?
And so as soon as you start getting, there's 3 main things. You get subscribers, ratings, and written reviews. And when those happen, they start noticing that you need to get placed in front of more people. So like when we launched Stephen Pess, that mastermind that you're in,
Yeah.
that you came and
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
attended. So Stephen Pesvendo's been a member of that mastermind. He started January of 2019, and in April of 2019, I helped him just launch his podcast. And what's funny is we used that stuff. We were like, we know that we need subscribers, we
Hmm.
know that we need ratings, and we know that we need reviews. And so we decided, and this is good for anyone who wants to launch a podcast, we decided to control it. instead of just do whatever you wanted, we decided to control the ratings reviews. So by actually contacting people and asking them to do that for us. What happened is that Bigger Pockets business, and you can go look this up, and I even have screenshots to show.
Mm-hmm.
But Bigger Pockets business, a good friend, you probably know Jay Scott pretty
Mm-hmm.
well, and his wife. Okay, so they were launching Bigger Pockets business at that same week, and what ended up happening is Stephen Pesavento was in top 10 in 4 different categories: the real estate category, the mindset category, the new and noteworthy, the trending category.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, he was number 1 in the business category, while Bigger Pockets was number 4, and they've got over 1 million subscribers.
Yeah.
So it's like people think you can just kind of push it out and it's going to be fine, but we beat out Bigger Pockets, and they're all good friends of mine. I love Jay, but Stephen Pesavento crushed it in 4 different categories because we specifically controlled who was subscribing, if they were giving a written review, and what the ratings were. So he got top 10 in 4 different categories. And
That's
so that's
awesome.
basically how we measure it. How we measure it is, do you have enough ratings and reviews? And if you do have 100 ratings and reviews, you're already at 0.6% on iTunes.
That's awesome. That's really, really important to know. I appreciate you pointing that out to me, as I've just last week launched the Weiss Advice podcast. I mean, this episode
Congrats.
might air a few weeks down the road, but this is really important and valuable information to me personally, and I try to utilize that and push that out there as much as we can and see how we can
Awesome.
control
Awesome.
that. So yeah, let me ask you another question, because you, as the host of Creative Real Estate Podcast, you've recently switched roles, kind of bringing on a partner in kind of heading that podcast, and you started a new podcast. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I can finally talk about it. As of June 1st, I can finally discuss it. And so I had to keep it quiet for about 3 months there. But I was in a mastermind, not mine. I pay for a couple other masterminds. And I was in one of these other ones and got up in front of the group, and I was very hesitant on what I should even talk about. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then it just spit out of my mouth like it was coming divine or something, right? So out of nowhere, I say to the whole group, I don't think my podcast is serving me. I know I'm adding value, and I know I'm helping, and I know it's grown my brand
Mm-hmm.
in the real estate community, but like, it's called the Creative Real Estate Podcast, and I've only got 2 people that I'm trying to work with right now. I want to either teach, coach, and mentor high level people that are already in real estate, already in syndications, to be able to attract more capital.
Mm-hmm.
That was one. And then secondly, I need to attract capital for my deals. And I started to think about my avatar, which we all need to do that one before
Mm-hmm.
we start a podcast.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about, who is my avatar? And I started thinking about him, and if he would scroll through iTunes and be like, heck yeah, creative real estate. I've got a ton of money. This is exactly what I need to land on. And so I started to think, I'm not really getting out in front of the right people. And I just said, do you guys think I could sell my podcast? And then I had 3 people offer me more than 50 grand after they found out how many downloads we got and stuff like that. So 3 people said, one person said, I'd easily give you 50. One said 50 to 60. And other one goes, I'll do 60 for sure. And so it's like, I don't even need to try. Take it, and I'll start a new podcast. So I'm grateful to be able to say, I got 3 offers above 50 grand. I sold it, and I'm starting and launching the apartment investing show, which I think will really help my brand to be able to be in front of the exact right avatars.
That's awesome. That's something that, just kind of brings us back to the first point we brought up, is the innovation, right? Is like, who would have even thought that you could just sell a podcast,
Yeah.
and someone and someone be willing to take it over. And
Yeah.
that's incredible. I think I commend you for, taking that risk, because it was, just really kind of putting yourself out there and risking that, all those years of work and hard work that you
Yeah.
put into that.
But with that said, like I've helped so many people launch podcasts, and every single one of them has more downloads than me because I didn't launch it the right way. I didn't do all the things that I now teach. So I have a feeling that I'll get more listeners by switching shows because now I can launch it the correct way and get
Right.
in new and noteworthy and all that. And the second thing that I was just going to mention, which is I think it matters, I have been working with the new owner. So we've been doing a slow transition. So kind of like it looks like we're partners right now,
Yeah.
and that's just because I want my listeners to become his listeners so that it's more valuable to him. If I feel like if we just went cold turkey, then people would just be like, "Wait, what? You sold the podcast? No, I'm just going to follow you wherever you go."
Right.
So we have been slowly putting him in. That was part of the contract. So
Right. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I got so much value from that podcast. One of my favorite, shows, to kind of pick up little tricks and, different things from so many different niches within real estate, that, no, I appreciate it. And especially like you had tips, and you had your own ways of giving over. I pointed more than one person to a series of 6 episodes you did last summer
oh
about
yeah,
how to invest, how to get involved in multifamily without any money, right? So you did a series of 6 different, little clips over there, and it was very valuable. And so for someone like me who was trying to figure out how I could get in to multifamily, but don't necessarily have a lot of money, it opened my mind up to different opportunities. And so I passed that along to other people as well. So
awesome. Thank you.
there
Thank
you
you.
go, right there. And
I'll return the favor.
I wrote a review.
Awesome.
At least
I'll
one.
return that favor too.
At least one.
At least one. They only let you do one, so
Yeah, I know. So at least one. But yeah, the other thing I really want to, kind of pick out of your brain, if you don't mind, is, and I've heard you speak about this before, so I don't want to like oversaturate the idea, but you've spoken so much about it. It ties into the other things we're talking about also, but talk about marketing and about tracking, in terms of email. And, I heard you speak on Whitney Sewell's podcast recently, and that was very valuable to me, about, using Active Campaign and using, all these different tools that help you to grow your own business, and other people's business. And I assume you're using these tools for other people as well.
yeah.
It's pretty incredible. Maybe just kind of open that up,
Just a
a
few
little,
marketing
yeah,
things.
a few things that have really helped you that you think our
Okay.
listeners could potentially get.
So what I want to share is just first start off by giving the broad understanding of how I look at marketing. And I look at it as a funnel, and I look at it as a 4 parts of a funnel. But it's not the same thing that I'm speaking at your meetup about, by the way.
Right.
4 things. At the very top of the funnel, the widest mouth, the biggest opening is awareness. Okay. I call it know. So the more amount of people who know who you are, know
Mm-hmm.
about you, the awareness. So it's know, like, trust. And we're getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And then the smallest piece below trust is that they're actually doing business with you.
Right.
And so within marketing, we need to figure out at the very top of the funnel, how do we get the absolute most amount of people to know who you are? Because if they're going to funnel in and you only have 10 people at the top of the funnel who know who you are, the absolute max you could ever have who do business with you, passively invest in your deals, buy your product, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is 10. You
Yeah.
could never go higher if only 10 people know about you. And so we, at the top part of the marketing, the awareness, is we start to think of what do you do to have people know who you are. And so we do things like social media, and I can share with your listeners a couple of hacks to kind of get more traction on social media. We talk about things like having a thought leadership platform, which could be a podcast or a YouTube channel or a book, or there's others, blogs and things like that, Facebook group. But we talk about having a thought leadership. And then the third one that we talk about having in the awareness
Hmm.
is we discuss having live in-person events. And so those events, all three of these things have a purpose. All three of them have a major purpose. Number one, your thought leadership or podcast gets people to talk about you behind your back. And that's a good thing, by the way. You're like, wait, talk about me behind my back. No, this is wonderful because
Right.
they start, Yona, because I had a thought leadership platform, pushed people to my podcast, pushed people to 6 different episodes when I wasn't there. I did the thing, and Yona already said in this podcast that he pushed people over there. So you want people to talk about you behind your back.
Hmm.
That's what the thought leadership, that's what your book will do. People will pass your book,
Right.
lend your book. And when you incorporate all of these things so people know who you are, you want people to start taking action. And the first easiest way that they can take action is by having a free giveaway where you get their email address. And the free giveaways, there's multiple different kinds of these. One of them could be a webinar. So
Hmm.
you have your thought leadership or your book, and then all of a sudden you say, hey, I've got a webinar. That basically means I'm going to give you more value for free, and you give me your email address. And so this is how they go from knowing you to starting to like you. And how they go from liking you to trusting you is you charging something for something. You charge some money for a product or for a service or for a checklist or whatever you have.
Yeah.
So you might have a free giveaway where you're saying, here's a checklist about how to vet an operator. And then later on, you say, here's a video. It's $10, and it teaches you exactly how to run the background checks on an
Yeah.
operator. So you pay $10, and that's going to save you hundreds of thousands. So that's how they start to trust you.
Right.
And then finally, the last part is, hey, I've got a deal. Do you want to invest passively with me? And that's where they actually start taking action on your stuff. So you
Absolutely.
kind of just want to funnel them down. So yeah, if you want to talk about a tip or trick for like meetups or for podcasting or for social media, I'd be more than happy to go into one of those for your listeners.
Okay, yeah, let's take one of those because we don't have a ton of time here, but let's touch on one trick or tip or something for social media.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
something we love, and
I love it. Yes. All right. So within social media, this is what amplifies your thought leadership platform or your live events. The only way for people to know what you're doing is if you tell them. And so social media is where we're going to tell them. And the biggest tip and trick that I can share with your listeners that it would be a great takeaway is the hierarchy of how Facebook or LinkedIn decides if they're going to put it in front of other people. And the hierarchy goes like this. At the very, very, very bottom, which cuts off your legs and makes you not be able to move, is that you put a link in it.
right.
So all of a sudden, especially a YouTube link, you're
Mhm.
like, no, I'm sharing a video. It's not a YouTube link. It's a video. No, it is a YouTube. You're literally putting the YouTube link in your Facebook. And what's interesting is that Facebook and Google and YouTube,
Mhm.
Facebook and Insta over here versus Google and YouTube over here, direct competitors. Both
Yeah.
of them want you to use their platforms. Both of them want you to stay on their platforms. And so because Facebook is addictive, YouTube's addictive, Facebook's never going to let you go over to YouTube, ever, ever, ever.
Right.
So at the bottom of the hierarchy is the one that'll cut off your legs if you directly have an outlink, a linking away from Facebook, especially to YouTube
Right.
videos.
Absolutely. And same applies to LinkedIn. 100%.
Perfect. So when you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do that gets better than that? The next thing better is when you post just text only. all you do is just post black and white text. What goes above that is when you post, which it's basically called a promo. It's an image card.
Mm-hmm.
You write the text, but you let it have a background color behind it.
Yeah.
That for some reason, Facebook is pushing it in front of more people than regular text. And then there's another level above that, and that's with a picture. So you go and find a photograph of whatever, something interesting, and you write text above that. That Facebook's going to say, wow, this is stopping people from scrolling through, and they spend more time because they're spending time looking at the picture and then deciding to read it, and they're more likely to start commenting. So you're keeping people on their platform, which helps them make more money.
Right.
Above that is going to be if you have an organic video, you upload a video, that's going to keep people on even more. So Facebook favors it. They give you more points toward putting it in front of people. And there's only 2 levels above. So we've talked about all of the worst ones, and there's only 2 levels above that. After organic video, then you're going to be looking at these 2 things, which I'm unclear which one's better right now. I think stories are the top, but also live videos, Facebook Lives are also really, really high. So I'm not sure which one's at the very top between them, but I think stories, because when you go and log into your Facebook, the story is at the top
Right
left,
at the top.
front and center.
Yeah.
And so they want you to see the story. So they put it out in front of everybody. And recognize this with all social media platforms. Whenever there's a new thing that is difficult to use or new to use, perhaps a story or a Facebook Live where it's uncomfortable, Facebook's always going to, whatever comes after this, Facebook's always going to say, this is the new tool. We want people to know about it, so we're going to start pushing it out in front of the most amount of people.
Absolutely.
So I think that'll be the best one thing to share is the hierarchy.
Makes sense. That's beautiful, unbelievable, and that works. I can say definitively that I've experienced that, and I've kind of picked up on these things. But you've given a lot more insight into it, because I don't use Facebook as much as LinkedIn, and it's the hierarchy is a little bit different on LinkedIn, but the same rules basically apply. And they're just implementing beta testing LinkedIn Live, and they're going to start introducing stories also to LinkedIn in different ways. So they're obviously a direct competitor, to Facebook in that way, especially since they've developed much more into a much more social media type platform. So we're going to jump right into the final 4. The question I have for you is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
So I had to think about it. I looked at that question before we even got started recording, and I don't want to say that any job is bad, honestly. Like, there's jobs that are harder, like landscaping was hot. I was sweating. I got a lot of exercise though. But I would say definitely the only one that I ever got fired from, which is Joni's Restaurant. I was about 16 years old, and my dad owned a landscaping company. So I was like, I gotta get out of the sun. And I started working at Joni's, and I was the worst server you would ever meet. And so it wasn't their fault, but in the beginning of surfing, I couldn't do it. And they ended up letting me go like 3 weeks later. They kept me on as long as possible. They thought that I would learn it, but I didn't. So it was definitely Joni's. I couldn't ever remember to bring the salads out on time or anything like that.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. I don't wish that upon anyone. But the second question, what is a book that's given you a paradigm shift?
Definitely Rich Dad Poor Dad has given me a giant paradigm shift, and I think everybody else knows that. So I decided to select one that I think not everyone has heard, and it's called Compound Effect. And I'm trying to remember if Darren Hardy wrote it or who was the
Hardy.
Okay. But Compound Effect, which is really, really interesting. I'm the kind of person who goes all out and I just get it done and then I stop. And so I've got this giant on switch or off switch, and there's never been a lot of consistency. But when I read that book, it helped me to understand how important consistency is with your within your relationships, within your investing, within your job, within your health. If you just do a little bit here and there, it compounds on itself. So I recommend anyone read that book.
Awesome. I highly recommend it as well. Good. One of the best books I read in the past couple of years. The third question is, what is a skill or talent you'd like to learn?
This is the toughest one because I still don't know. I would love to be better at the piano. I can play the piano a little bit. I had to start writing music, but there's some people that crush it at the piano. There's even 4-year-olds that are better than I am now. And if I had a little bit more of the skills on the piano, I think it'd be awesome. I think it really, I don't know if it'd be life changing, but it'd be incredible. I would love it.
Yeah, music is incredible, and it definitely brings a lot of value to anyone's life. Fourth and final question: what does success mean to you?
It's tough. Ultimate success means that you're moving forward. You're happy. I don't think it means that you've achieved or accomplished a certain thing. I think it's that you are happy about the journey. If you're happy about whatever journey you're on, you're successful.
Beautiful. I love that. And finally, where can our listeners find you?
Awesome. If they're looking to raise more capital, raisingmoneycoach.com.
Unbelievable. Awesome. Beautiful. And don't forget about the Raising Money Summit coming up in Denver in October. We're going to put a link in the show notes down to that so people can check that out. And I just want to thank you again for joining me. This has been kind of like a full circle to me in a way, right? Because from the first podcast to now we're doing it and able to give back, bring you on, share so much value to our listeners. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you, Yona.
Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.